Chelsea takeover versus anti-racism. So as many are aware, because we've covered this before, Chelsea have been put up for sale by their owner, Roman Abramovich, because he had his assets frozen for the UK government for reasons we all know. This has had huge consequences for the club because it means until they find a new buyer, they can't carry out any transactions, to my knowledge, at all. This means they can't pay their own staff.
Can they even pay their own players?
No. Can't pay their own players. They can't offer new contracts to those players. They can't enter the market for new players. And of course, there is the logistical problem as well. It was calculated at the time that the club was put up for sale that they had 3 weeks before entering insolvency. Very recently, they lost their free sponsorship, and their kit manufacturer, Nike, are prohibited from manufacturing shirts for them as well. Somehow, however, the club has obviously survived. It's been rumoured that the players have been chipping in to pay for travel to matches. It was rumoured also that Chelsea have prolonged their survival by not paying wages at all until a takeover is completed. This was outlined as a possible cause of action by Director of Football Petr Cech. But whatever the case, the most important thing for them, of course, is to find a buyer and formally complete the takeover. Because it was the UK government who effectively seized control of the club, they inherited the responsibility of no, that's what happened.
No, I agree. I just love the idea that the UK government should become the one who's the buyer.
Yeah.
Like, it's just a state-run club now.
Yeah,
in effect.
In effect, it is at this present time. I never foresaw this. Oh, not in my wildest
UK
nightmares.
Gov FC.
Yeah. But they inherited the responsibility of finding a suitable buyer and ensuring that it goes through as quickly as possible. They delegated this responsibility to the Rain Group. It normally takes 6 weeks to complete a takeover, but Chelsea probably don't have that time, financially speaking. But if we get to the next clip. But in short, a shortlist has been made for all the possible or the most suitable candidates, according to the Rain Group anyway. It includes LA Dodgers owner, you've probably never heard of these, but LA Dodgers owner Ted Bowley, Sir Martin Broughton, Swiss businessman Hans-Jörg Wyss, Jonathan Goldstein, Lord Sebastian Coe, you've probably heard of them, and the Ricketts family, who own the Chicago Cubs baseball team. It's rumoured that the Ricketts family are the Rain Group's preferred bidder, which would make them favourites to acquire the club. But they're not very popular. And the reason for this, according to the Chelsea Supporters Trust, is because they're Islamophobic.
What?
Because they're Islamophobic.
Sorry, they know what Islam is. Is this where this is going to go? They know that Islam's opinions on homosexuality are not kosher.
It's along those lines. We're going to go into detail on precisely what the object of contention is. But if we move on to the I article, which covers this. Okay, so the Chelsea Supporters Trust, who have been vocal in the weeks since Abramovich was sanctioned by the UK government for alleged links to Vladimir Putin's regime, have reiterated that they will do what we can to protect the club from falling into the wrong hands, insisting any prospective new owners must support inclusivity and diversity. Yep. Perhaps of greater importance than our asks for greater fan representation and protection of the club's heritage, any new owners must share the inclusive views of Chelsea FC and our diverse support base. The Trust said in an open letter on Wednesday, "We will challenge any prospective owner where there are concerns over their commitments to these values." Ricketts said in an email in 2012, "Christians and Jews can have mutual respect for each other to create a civil society. As you know, Islam cannot do that. Therefore, we cannot ever let Islam become a large part of our society. Muslims are, naturally, our enemy due to their deep antagonism and bias against non-Muslims." His son, Tom...
Okay, hang on.
You're gone.
That's 100% true. That is 100% true. Because they're arguing there about civil society, right? That's the word to use. Well, what is civil society? It's the different clubs and organizations we make up outside of the government in our own towns or wherever else, right? And, well, there are literally quotes in the Quran, and I'm sure people will lovely enough find them and put them in the comments, in which you can just have quotes from the Quran or the Hadith in which endlessly you are commanded by God to not make friends with non-Muslims. Yeah. You are to live separate from non-Muslims at all times, if you can help it.
Yes.
And it's just like, well, okay, there. This is why you end up with, like, Muslim cycling clubs.
Yeah, and then there was, of course, the theological, I'll say, differences between the Islamic world and what you could call the Judeo-Christian world, where, of course...
Yeah, I'm going to find a quote while I say.
Yeah, but of course, again, I'm not particularly well versed on this. I studied this in one of my critical base theory episodes a while ago. But in short, being a good Muslim entails, in effect, obeying obeying the law or obeying Islamic law in effect. It's not called. It doesn't translate as submission for no reason. That has more proactive application in the case of Christianity, where good action amounts to doing good, ultimately because you know it's in your heart that that is right. So there's actually a concept of free will intrinsic, you could say, in Christianity, which actually places it in, you could say, tension with Islam on the grounds that you have one claiming that these are the laws and you just must obey them whether you like it or not, and then you have those who are of course look at the world in a much more, you could say, historicist way. I mean, that's very vaguely explained, but in short, it's not an unfounded point at all. It's very, very strongly put in the most non-woke way imaginable, and it's not hedged in the slightest. But it's not the most misguided observation about Islam that has ever been said, and that's absolutely right. But even so, the person who made that comment didn't actually make a bid for the club. It's the father of the person who's made a bid for the club.
Yeah, but he's still not wrong.
Yeah, and these.
I found a quote if you want it.
Yeah, go on.
So from the Quran, let not believers take disbelievers as allies rather than believers, and whoever of you does that has nothing with Allah except when taking precaution against them in prudence.
Yeah.
So basically, do not take non-believers as allies, as in, friends and whatnot as well, this extends to, unless you have to, in prudence, because you're in enemy territory, or because you just need to.
Yeah. It's a case made. It's fundamentally not wrong.
And there are many more. I just don't have time to find them because I didn't have a
and then there are of course other matters which we won't go into which can justify that
just
point.
Endless articles.
The comments,
just as soon as I googled it, just like, can Muslims and non-Muslims be friends?
Yeah, the comments anyway were made 10 years ago. Joe Ricketts, the man who made the comments, is not actually involved in the takeover bid. So you have to ask, why has so much of a fuss been kicked here? Are the Chelsea supporters trust? I'm really disappointed at them. Really suggesting that because the bidder's dad said something strong about Muslims once, that they should be prohibited from acquiring the club altogether at a time that it's in an existential crisis, literally. Is it me, or does that not sound a bit insane?
No, it sounds perfectly reasonable if you're an ideologue.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about. We cannot have an ideological enemy owning the club.
Yeah.
And it's someone who believes something which is true, but not politically true, as in politically correct.
Of course, the Ricketts family have been forced to do the politically correct thing, if we get the next article up here. And they've basically come forward to denounce the comments included in the email that leaks in the hope that it would win the Chelsea fans around. And the statement reads as follows: "Our family rejects any form of hate in the strongest possible terms. Racism and Islamophobia have no place whatsoever in our society. We have developed deep and abiding partnership with the Muslim community in Chicago, as well as with all communities of colour. Respect for diversity and inclusion are central to our family's values. If we prevail in our bid for Chelsea, we commit to the club and to the fans that it will actively promote these values." Well, it's needless to say that didn't wash with the fans. But I'm just going to say I'm skeptical about the Ricketts family too, but not for this reason. I'm not convinced, and I'm really, really sorry if this comes across as snobby, but after the European Super League, I don't trust American owners in English football. I'm sorry. I'm not going to elaborate on the European Super League because it was just such a travesty. But in short, the fact that they thought that franchise was a good idea, effectively completely changing the face of the game for the sake of appealing to the Eastern market, in effect, just goes to show how far away they are from understanding the value that British people or European people see in football, or what they call soccer. But that point aside, apparently they haven't been particularly good owners for the Chicago Cubs baseball team either. Apparently they're suffering from quite a bit of debt, and if they're in debt under their ownership, I'm not entirely sure that acquiring another club is either responsible or a good idea. For, of course, the club that needs to be taken over, which is Chelsea. But anyway, despite the contrived source of anger, as you could probably expect, #NoToRicketts has become a movement. So if we move on to the first tweet of No2Ricketts, you can see, this is an organised protest which is going to take place tomorrow at 12 p.m. at Stamford Bridge, uploaded by Conhi. As you can see, it's near enough an official movement hosted by the Chelsea Supporters Trust. If we move on to the next, we can see another fan who's unhappy. For all Chelsea fans, good luck to Todd Bowley and co. I don't know much about Todd Bowley, but for the sake of our football club, win this race for us. He's, of course, one of the other bidders who made the shortlist. And if we get to the next clip up here, we can see someone who actually made an attempt to claim that Thomas Tuchel agrees with their cause. But if you move quickly on to the next, we can see that that was actually photoshopped by an opportunist. But there is a petition that is trying to stop the Ricketts family from acquiring the club, which has exceeded 8,000 signatories. Which, even though that's of course not enough for it to
18,000.
18,000, yeah, you're quite right. Even though that's not enough to demand a debate in Parliament, I don't believe. It's that's quite some number.
Well, I think it is enough to get a response from the government.
Yeah, but is it enough for it to be
no, that's
a subject of yeah, that's what I thought. So yeah, a lot of unrest about this. What do you think, though, this says about English football, the fact that this has happened? Just out of interest.
I don't think the government gives a toss.
No. But then again, there were rumours, and I heard this when it broke out on TalkSport, that the government were considering actually blocking the Ricketts family from the short, or not including them on the shortlist for the reason that they've said some concerning, or shall we say, emitted some concerning views on certain social matters. The fact that we're monitoring people this closely with regards to their political views on the subject of whether they deserve to complete a major takeover, I think marks a very concerning time in football.
I mean, this may very well be expanded to a lot more things.
Yeah, it's not
just if you said one thing that's anti-politically correct, then you can't do business.
You will be barred from buying a football club for the rest of your life. Many people say absolutely terrible things, but it's one thing to acknowledge that as a terrible thing, and another thing to say that it disqualifies you from, I don't know, doing, for example, doing good in developing a football club. I just think this is an extremely bad way to regulate how business takeovers. Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah, somewhat uncontroversial, I know, but yeah, I'm going to wrap this up anyway. So, a few months ago, as you may be aware, I wrote an article about how sports broadcasting has metamorphosed into a woke kleptocracy. What this story suggests regrettably is that this culture has finally reached fan-based institutions, which I didn't even anticipate. I had some hope that there was still the old spirit of football there, if you like, when the European Super League kicked off, and you actually had good working class people, the old guard of football supporters, if you like, who supported the clubs on the terraces, taking to the streets to actually contest the European Super League, to the point where it actually never happened. It was a remarkable victory. But on subjects like this, it really does feel like the woke zeitgeist has got them. So your argument, for example, against Hassan Piker and Destiny, this in a sense suggests that the intersectionalist attempt to alter the way that markets function is working, to the point that capitalism is altering to become more progressive.
Well, you can't engage in business unless you agree with the ideology.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the same as any socialist country.
Yeah, you could say you could understand it as a new managerial class, in a sense, who like capitalism in as much as they're the ones who benefit from it.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast The Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this old video here, The Politics of Watchmen, which has been incredibly popular, so I thought I'd feature it again. So if you want to check that out, do go out and subscribe. Otherwise, if you want to follow Harry and what else he's doing, you can follow him on Getter at Harry Lotus Eater. Thank you and goodbye.